When did Siemens make its main acquisitions in the solar thermal area? Which companies were these? What technologies did they offer? And why did it, at that time, seem a good investment?
Well, Siemens made those investments in 2009, and at the time the thought was simply that they wanted to have a more comprehensive portfolio of power generation equipment activities. The view was that alternative energy will take an ever-increasing share in power generation equipment, and they concluded that the two winning technologies will be wind, preferably offshore, and solar thermal, and therefore they acquired a 28% stake in Archimede in Italy in 2009, and then they also acquired in October 2009 a stake in Solel Solar Systems. What was good about it was that that gave them access to the two key technologies which are differentiated by the medium that they use. One uses molten salt and the other uses oil, and now they have both of those technologies.
In the solar receivers.
If you now look what Siemens brought to the table, it was components such as inverters and steam turbines. They obviously have project management skills. They can connect solar thermal plants to the grid. They have a very strong balance sheet, which is needed in that industry. They, of course, have customer access, and then they have a stake in Desertec, which, of course, if it takes off, is a huge investment in solar thermal.
2 years later, can we already determine whether Siemens for Solel paid too much?
If you look at it in the short term, definitely. They paid $418 million. That was roughly about 2 times revenues, and the revenues are definitely not growing. We'll see if they will actually be shrinking. But from that perspective, it clearly looks expensive in the short term. If, of course, solar thermal in a couple of years generates billions of revenues for Siemens, it may be a different story, but that doesn't look like it at the moment.
What happened after these acquisitions that resulted in the technology failing to meet expectations so far?
I don't know if it's really the technology that's the problem. I think it was much rather project delays and subsequently also problems with the financing of existing projects, and then of course simply the fact that there were no follow-on projects because of the crisis, particularly in Spain. And in addition, what you're seeing now is that we have a complete collapse in pricing in photovoltaic. So what Siemens is facing is competition from a competing technology, which at the moment is often simply cheaper than solar thermal.
So was Siemens betting on the wrong horse, or was it just bad timing?
Difficult to tell as of yet. My assessment is that they are betting on the right horse, but that it will take a lot longer to take off. If we look at photovoltaic, I think we're currently seeing an extreme situation of very, very low pricing, which makes it super competitive against solar thermal. But in the medium term, it looks as if on an industrial scale, only solar thermal will be able to provide the energy that's really needed.
Will Siemens now possibly shift its strategy towards photovoltaics?
No, I don't think so. As you know, Siemens, they decided years ago to exit photovoltaic, and I think it makes absolutely no sense for Siemens to enter that field. There's no competitive advantage that Siemens could bring to the table in photovoltaic. It would be sheer madness, I think, to do so.
Any guess what the more successful technology for the future will be when it comes to industrial-sized power plants, solar thermal or photovoltaic?
As I mentioned before, I think it's solar thermal.